What's up, guys? Welcome back to Engine25 Reviews. This is the show where I invite friends, colleagues, academics, filmmakers, other people who are just generally way funnier, smarter, and more qualified than me, and we talk about movies, TV shows, and nerd out about stuff we think is cool. If you like that, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and tell your friends. I'm not going to read the part about getting episodes out weekly because that's not apparently going to happen right now. We're available on video as on YouTube and as an audio podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Search for Engine25 Reviews on your favorite service, no space in Engine25, or hit one of the links in the notes down below. My name is Brandon. I'm your host. You can find me at Engine25 on all the things, sometimes with an underscore at the end. Today, we're going to talk about Dune Part Two, directed by Denis Villeneuve. But before we get there, let me introduce my guest. Regular Catherine Burrell is back on the show. She's a communication PhD student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, specializing in film studies. She has a BA in theater and film studies from Georgia Southern University. I went there. And an MA in communication and documentary studies from Northern Arizona University. And she just makes me sound real smart. How are you doing, Katy? What's going on?
I'm good, and I love it, especially when people read out my academic qualifications, and it always makes me feel good. So I'm doing well.
Good. Yeah, I have one of those degrees. I've got a BA, so that's a thing. But how are you? How you been?
It's the hard thing. The BA is very hard, and I tell my undergraduates all the time that nothing is like doing a BA. The BA in itself is like insane.
Says the woman who's like halfway through a PhD. I don't believe you.
I mean, they have their differences for sure, and their different rigors. But when we were at Southern, I'm sure you had a similar experience of doing so many different things as an undergrad. And
that's true. And I did that on purpose. Like I picked like communication arts, which is just is a very general degree, so I could take classes in a number of different things and so I could still graduate on time. So I gamed the system. But
one of my friends asked me recently here, because he had said like, go see this movie, and I was like, is it worth me dragging myself out of bed and all this reading I'm doing for class to go see it? And he said, yeah, I think so. And so I went, and later he was like, well, how did you like it? We talked about it. And he was like, how do you even make time to see all these movies? Because I had said, oh, I'm going to go see this next or whatever. And he was like, how do you have the time? And I was like,
you don't sleep.
I was so busy as an undergraduate that like I've got the schedule down. Like
time management. It's a very important life skill.
Yeah.
What have you been watching? Anything good?
Oh my gosh. I mean, so much. And a lot of it is stuff that isn't new releases, actually. So I've actually been doing some research about the popularity and function of re-releases in cinema, or like family events in cinema or something like that.
I feel like there have been a lot of like re-releases, like 20th anniversary or 50th anniversary kind of thing. Just like
all of these kinds of things, but also special programming. We have a great little shout out to Amherst Cinema, our little independent nonprofit community arts cinema here at Amherst.
Love that.
So they're doing really cool things all the time. And then, of course, at our local Cinemark, like the big chain theater here, they also have things like 25th anniversary of this, or, a Tuesday night screening of, whatever this is. And so I've been doing some of those, but I also saw recently The Zone of Interest, which I thought was
there was like 2 weeks where I was like, I'm going to go see Zone of Interest, and it just never happened. It's just like, not even like,
I had a very similar like quality of like sound that I think Dune actually kind of has in common with it.
Okay,
in a different way.
That's interesting.
So we can talk about that later. But I saw.
You saw Argyle, right? Oh, what'd you say?
I did see Argyle. I saw Argyle for my birthday with my girlfriends. I was like, the one thing I want to do for my birthday is see the new Henry Cavill movie on opening weekend. So
and he's not in the movie very much, unfortunately.
But he makes perfect use of the time that he is.
That's true. Just being there and being pretty and having a terrible haircut.
Love, yes.
I saw Argyle too, and I don't think it's very good. but
No, but if it's
I enjoy.
purposeful.
It's made for me. It's like it's making fun of like all the shitty James Bond movies and like Get Smart and
Yeah,
Mission Impossible and like all that bad spy TV. No, and it's like I had a
100%.
great
And it
time with it.
knows
I
that it's
just yeah.
heavy-handed.
Um,
Yeah.
but anything else of
I
note?
think you'll be interested to know that on Monday night, so 2 days from now,
This
I
is
will
right
be
now. We're on Saturday.
seeing,
Yeah,
right. So I will be seeing Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom in theaters, and I'm very excited about it. It's going to
sounds
have an
awesome.
introduction from an archaeologist, and it's
Nice.
like one like you know how Stephen Colbert does his like Colbert questionnaire on his show, and one of them is, "What is your favorite action movie?" And Temple of Doom, I think, is my favorite action movie. Like,
That's
I have my
fair.
favorite movies, but Temple of Doom, just something about it. I'm very much looking forward to this.
Love it. There.
And actually, it's the movie that got me kind of started into loving film. So,
Nice.
like,
I'm going to
really
Savannah
looking
this
forward.
weekend to spend with friends, and I on Thursday night there's a screening of Alien at SCAD, and like one of the professors is going to like, and
Oh,
it's like I have to work late Thursday. I can't leave till Friday morning, and it's like it bums me out. I can't go.
that's sad.
Yeah, yeah. So
And
other
that's a
than
nice theater too. That's a nice theater to see
it
things in,
is,
to
yeah,
movie
yeah.
releases.
Other than Dune, I've been watching Masters of the Air on Apple TV Plus. And are you a fan of like Band of Brothers or The Pacific?
I know of them. I don't know enough to say if I'm a fan.
Okay, A Band of Brothers is amazing. It's it's about a company going through a campaign at the end of World War II, right? You know, they
Mhm,
kind of go through boot camp and then they're
mhm.
airborne, so they parachute in and no, it's fantastic and it's like a brotherhood or like they're stuck in the
Yeah,
mud for months and
of
it's
brothers,
freezing and yeah, exactly. And
a
then
band of brothers.
uh, the Pacific is, and it's a Tom Hanks show, like Tom Hanks and Spielberg and some other people. And then they did the
Yeah.
Pacific in 2010, 2011-ish. And it's very good. I don't think it's as good as Band of Brothers, but it's different, but it's very good. It's about some stuff going on in the Pacific Theater. And they have made another show called Masters of the Air. It's about crews on flying fortresses. Um,
Mm.
and it it's good. Like it's a big disappointment for me personally. It's just like it doesn't hit any of the highs of the other shows. And it doesn't really, in my opinion, it didn't really get interesting until like episode 7, or episode 6, which came out last week, and episode 7 was yesterday. They one of the crews goes down and gets stuck in a POW camp. And this is historical. This isn't. There's a novel. It's based on a novel. Blah blah blah. I'm not
Yeah,
spoiling anything. You can't. It's not just a thing.
you can't
Um,
look up for yourself.
it's just history. But yeah, so it's like it got a lot more interesting when that happened as opposed to just flying aerial missions over and over again, which are cool, but it's the same thing
Mm,
every time, really. Rewatching the Netflix
yeah.
Daredevil show, which is real good. It's real good. I saw Charlie Cox at a convention a few weeks ago. Um,
Oh, nice.
Bob Marley, One Love, it's pretty okay. Kingsley Ben-Adir's really good.
I I
It's
heard that he was very good in it, and the movie did well,
mhm.
much better than people thought it would be.
It's
That
very
opening week, but its opening weekend was also Madam Web's opening weekend. And being a comic book movie girly like I am, I went and saw it.
I'm going tonight. We will talk. I don't know. We probably won't have time to do it on the show, but you and I will text and I'll see because I know you had some thoughts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't even with this movie. I
I know.
can't.
I really liked Wonka, which is how our boy Timmy from Dune. And then Drive Away Dolls is really great. It's like it's Ethan Cohen, and it's two girls have to they have to drive a car down to Tallahassee, and they find a severed head in a mysterious case in the trunk, and also it's like a very horny lesbian sex comedy. And it's just like an interesting
Is
mix. It's
is
like
is Matt Damon in this one
yeah,
too? I'm
Matt
trying to
Damon
go through.
is in it
Okay.
for a few minutes, and like Pedro Pascal's in it from they're and in
Okay.
each of they're really small parts, but they're Coleman Domingo has a little role. But no, it's really
Okay.
great. And like I said a minute ago, whatever it was that a few weeks ago, Dune Part One was released again in theaters for the weekend, and I watched it on HBO Max originally because it came out during the pandemic, and I have the Blu-ray, and I've watched it many times, or probably 4 or 5 times since. And I love Dune Part One, but I'd never seen it on the big screen before, and that was an experience. It's like, no, it's and at the end they showed a clip, like a little interview, or I wouldn't call it an interview, but a clip with Denis Villeneuve, and then the extended clip of when Paul first rides the sandworm. And it was stunning, and we will talk about it in more detail later on. But it made me do. I usually kind of sit in the back of a theater and usually on the side just in case I have to get up. But no, for Dune Part Two, I was like, I'm going to sit midway. I'm going to sit right in the middle, so I can't see the sides of the screen. Oh no, yeah, it was
immersed.
It was amazing. But let's get to why we're here. Dune Part 2 is also directed by Denis Villeneuve from a script he wrote with John Spates, released on Friday, March 1st, 2024, with previews on Thursday, February 29th. Has a reported budget of $190 million, up from the $165 million of Part 1. Recording on Saturday, March 2nd, it's hard to get a read on opening box office, but Hollywood Reporter reports $32 million on Friday and tracking to reach $75 million by the end of the weekend. And that's really good. That's almost double what the first one made, and just for a big sci-fi movie that, like, I wouldn't necessarily call this mainstream. That's a pretty good weekend, like, especially in post-pandemic times.
Yeah. And domestic weekend too. The internationals will be.
Oh yeah, it's gonna make tons of money internationally. Like, this is gonna make tons of money in Europe, and China.
It will. It was the first time since Barbenheimer that I'd seen this chain movie theater here, be so busy and have so many people interested in talking. And I had actually been doing research on that very thing last semester, and in my field notes I was talking about how empty these places are, and they really survive on big.
And it bums me out. Yeah. And I love to see a movie with an audience, and I like to, I like the applause, and I'm that guy that hollers, and, so it's like,
yeah. My friends that were with me were like, thank you. So, like, before the movie started, they were like, thank you for, like, making sure we got tickets, because I, like, ordered them all together.
Right.
They're like, there's a lot of people here.
And it was packed. And funny story, I thought my screening was at 7. So I got there at like 10 to 7. I got my popcorn. I went and sat down, and there were like 3 people in there, and I was like, really? I was so upset. And then I looked at my phone. It's like the screening wasn't until 7:20. It's like, okay, I misread. I was there early. It was all good. By the time the movie started, it was packed. I was just like, I walked in and my heart sank. I was like, no, I need movies like this. Yeah. And for them to make more movies like this, people have to come see them.
Absolutely. And there's a whole, economy of why that may or may not be the case now, that people are willing to spend money like that. And it's a whole industry question, especially with these strikes that have happened last year. So, I mean, it's a whole thing, but it made me really happy. And we usually have a pretty lively movie scene at our downtown cinema versus our chain cinema too. So they're hopping and moving, and I was really glad to see people getting excited about this movie.
Me too. No, yeah, and no, I have friends that are not traditionally like big sci-fi people that are like very excited to see this, and they like the first one. Like a lot of people thought the first one was. It is a lot. Right. And that first movie is 2.5 hours of exposition. And I will, like some other people that I know is it's a lot of exposition and not much happened. And, you're sitting there for 2 hours, and then the end is Paul kills a guy that we don't even know. And then the movie's over. Like, and I disagree with a lot of those sentiments, but also if those are your complaints with Part 1, then it's all addressed. Like, you're gonna all the payoff, like, it's all here. No,
it's true, but they go really well together.
They do. Like, it's really like kind of one big 5-hour kind of epic.
Hence why it's part one and part two. I'm
You-
like talking to my microphone, like, hello, it's part one and part two. There's a reason. And the trajectory of moving these things between, or these making these intellectual properties that already exist into two separate movies started with actually it was Breaking Dawn, Twilight Breaking Dawn. They made
was
it
that the
part
first one?
and
Because
part
Harry
two.
Potter did it. The Hobbit did it.
Oh no, was it Harry Potter? I think it was Harry Potter.
I just don't remember which one came first, because they were all kind of like, Harry Potter was ongoing and Twilight started when I was in high school.
It was Harry Potter and then Twilight and then the Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2, and then the Hobbit.
And the director of the Hunger Games thought that it was the stupidest thing ever. And I rewatched that series going into the new one, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and it's normally I'm all right. It's like, okay, I will sit through both parts, and if it goes together very well, great. But no, it's just like the first part of Hunger Games, the third Hunger Games is a slog. It's not good.
And I understand the desire to, when like on the like optimistic side, like give enough space to tell the whole story in
Right.
Feature-length film. On the other side, it's a total capitalistic gambit to like make sure that we want to come back and like see the next one.
No, it
it's
absolutely is. And I'm a Hobbit apologist. It's like, so that's, I don't I absolutely think those movies should be better than they are, and there probably isn't. There was another way to do it than what they did, but there's a lot in them that I really enjoy. So it's
my point is that Dune Parts 1 and 2 don't feel like that at all. They feel like very well made films. And even in Part 1, that's slower, it still has a working narrative structure. Like it works.
I agree, except that it doesn't have a third act. But you're right. Like it has a very clear beginning and a middle.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
They work together very well, and they don't feel like one was made to rake in an audience just to like make sure they can get enough people in for two different properties. Right. So
I totally agree.
I was really happy with the way that this one just kind of picks up where it left off and maintains the level, the very like incredible level of visuals and movie making that the first one was, people were so astounded by.
And that's the consistent thing is just like,
yeah,
it's visually very cool, but I don't understand it. It's just like, and it's, I hope that a lot of those questions, or I feel like a lot of them are addressed in part two, and that if you watch them together, it will, it'll work itself out. But, you said it picks up right where part one left off. Like the last scene is there, Paul has been taken in by the Fremen, and they are walking into the desert, and it picks up they're walking in the desert. Or actually, I noticed the first time you see Paul in the first movie, he's asleep. The first time you see him in this movie, he's asleep. And I don't know if that's intentional, but it was I noticed it, or I don't know what the meaning would be, but that's interesting note.
I love it, like the wrap above the scene though, where Johnny is like, and it's not a spoiler at all, but Johnny is like, well, like you were asleep, and he was like, no, I wasn't. It's very much like maybe at the beginning of part one he was asleep, right? And now he's awake, which is thematically like the whole point.
See, I knew there was a reason, and you just explained it to me. I was just like, they've done this twice, and usually if you do it more than once, there's a reason.
There it is.
Yes. So Paul and his mother are traveling with the Fremen to a hideout they call a siege, and then the movie opens. They get kind of ambushed by the Harkonnens, and it's amazing. But we'll talk about that later on. Katy, this movie's unbelievable. Oh God, no, it's
kind of so unique in that way where like even when I walked out of my theater and like we met up with our little group and one of my other friends had invited a couple of his friends that I didn't know. And so even all of us just like standing together and talking about it, we just walked out and we were just like, all right, so that was great. And like you would have thought that like we were kind of just like, all right, like okay. But it was just like
It's so much to take in.
to the point
Yeah,
where there's
like,
nothing else to say. It's like that was great.
you know, and we'll talk about the ending, but like it leads up to this climax that like is a little understated, but it has a lot of very big implications. And you know, it's like it's probably not what people are expecting. And it's God.
I find this idea of it being understated very interesting because
Maybe okay before
I understand what you mean.
Yeah,
because it seems like people just kind of things just kind of happened, but
well, yeah,
every
and
single decision led up to it.
That is true, but I guess that may be a poor choice of words on my part. It's very like there's this big epic battle thing leading up to it, and then the movie just kind of wraps up with a bunch of people talking. And I guess, you know, like I guess a lot of movies do that.
That's denouement.
Yeah.
So I'm not bothered by it.
But like, you know, like the biggest implications for the future and for like the themes of the whole movie happen in one room with a couple of people, as opposed to some of the other big epic things that happen here. And, you know, maybe I'm overthinking that part, but it's just, and I would kind of say the same thing about the first one too. Like, you know, it has and okay, let's talk about the ending later because I don't want to, well, it's because I don't want to say the thing
accidentally.
Yeah, accidentally. Exactly. No.
I know.
Because no. So yeah, I'm moving on.
Go back, put a pin in it.
It's this unbelievable cinema. Like this is the best science fiction movie since The Matrix. Like it's
yes, or even but The Matrix, yes, but also Blade Runner 2049, obviously from Denis. And there were a couple of parts like visually in this movie where I was like, this feels like 2049. Like kind of, you know, and like in the tone and the visuals, I was just kind of like,
I'll give you that. So like, especially with the stuff on Katy Prime and like Denis does this kind of thing where like, and I guess it's a little bit related to cinematography, but when people are talking and it's a really important conversation, but you know, he's very tight on faces and stuff. And the background is so soft. Like, it's almost like there's no set, you know what I mean? Like they're just kind of in a kind of a nebulous space in a certain way, you know, and that was present in 2049. It's a little bit in like Arrival, and it's very present in both Dune movies.
If I could kind of like visually and thematically kind of like make an amalgam of some of Denis Villeneuve's other films that I would use to describe Dune Part Two, it would be 2049 and Arrival. I mean, like if you put those two together somehow, you get Dune Part Two.
And there's a really great there's an article, or I'll see if I can find it. I'll drop it in the show notes. Where it's probably it had to be a video because it showed the clips where Denis talks about his favorite shot from each one of his films, and I think it's I think you'll dig that a lot. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So one another thing that's probably going to sound like hyperbole to a lot of people, but this is one of the best casts ever assembled for cinema. There's
one of them.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna plant my flag in the ground and say number one, but like it's up there. I would have said the same thing about good. Oppenheimer. Just the wealth of talent and incredibly talented actors, even in small roles here. Timothy Chalamet really comes into his own as Paul. Like in the first one, he was, he very well-meaning, but kind of, like he was a boy and he's kind of impulsive. And this one, like he's figured himself out and he's a man and he's here to do a thing. And it's, he's really come into his own.
And it's because he's also faced with, sorry, we're getting into the character.
No, please,
tough
absolutely.
choices.
Yeah.
Like tough choices that he finally knows that nobody else can make for him. Kind of lost every support system he's ever had. So, and Timothy Chalamet or Timothée Chalamet. These are the memes
Yeah.
the internet likes. He really pulls back as an actor, right? He doesn't go over the top. There are over the top moments. There are parts of the characters
Well, that's intentional. You know,
performance
yeah,
so it's a good job on him.
He brings it in quite a lot, and then like there are times where he has these like big explosions of passion or anger that are you know all the more impactful.
And I think maybe like one like just like basic kind of go-to instinct would be to like in the second movie and with like higher stakes in some ways to go bigger, right? And so I think that's a really great reflection from Timothée Chalamet and Denis Villeneuve to bring it back. Very much in that kind of like Christopher Nolan, RDJ kind of way, like pull it back. Not that I think Timothée Chalamet has a kind of like extra boisterous kind of thing, but he said in some interviews, he was like, it was very odd going from Wonka to Dune 2. Like it was a really big flip flop. So
They're pretty much the same.
Really appreciate I actually haven't seen Wonka.
No, Wonka's really great. Like I was actually very surprised at how well I liked it. No, yeah.
But so mad props is what I'm saying to Timothée Chalamet. Like he did a very, very good performance.
Zendaya also kind of blew me away. She's very, very good in Euphoria. Like I knew she had it in her, but this is very different. And like the dynamic between her and Paul, like there's some genuine love and affection there, but she's a skeptic, right? Like she's very much in her own beliefs as a number of characters are, and she doesn't believe in these like religious prophecies that that people are talking about in a lot of ways, and that a lot of people think Paul kind of applies to. And that that it creates some interesting friction between them, but there's a genuine love and respect that's really touching in a lot of moments. I'm always been a big fan of Javier Bardem. We get much more of him here, and he's delightful and filthy, and it's just like, and he's just very excitable. He's just
yes. We left the theater saying the memes and the gifs that are going to come out of Javier Bardem has still gone.
Yeah, and it's like today is the day you become a Fremen, or you will die. And that's not a threat. That's just the likely outcome of this impossible test he's about to take. It's just like either you're gonna succeed, or it's gonna kill you.
Or like, what else does he say? It's not a spoiler because there's no context for it. In this conversation,
Go for it.
What does he say? It's he says, "Kill me, it's the only way," or something like that. But it's like comes off as so kind of like offhanded.
Yeah, and like it kind of excited in a way. Like, yeah, no, we're good.
Just all the memes are great, but I mean, to Javier Bardem's credit, like he was carrying a lot of these like more comedic moments in this film, and me knowing nothing about any of it, I was surprised by that. So I don't know if other people were.
I have not read any of the novels. I have seen the old movie. Back in the day, I watched like the terrible TV miniseries, and like I was way too young to understand. But like basically what I know, I've read from Wikipedia. And it was largely after having seen the first movie, so I kind of know, I had a fair idea of what was going to happen in this, like generally, and kind of have a fair picture of where it's going in theory. But, yeah, like I don't read enough to like the Dune. I don't have time to read an 800-page epic. So that's where we are. I have always loved Stellan Skarsgård. I will say, like in the first movie, I think he's terrifying. He's like he's gross, and the way like that he talks within this really odd kind of rhythm. And actually, I think that's interesting because like a lot of the other Harkonnens in this film, we see a lot more of the Harkonnen people, and they kind of talk the same way, just like the way that he speaks, and it's different than the way like the Fremen talk, which is also like they. I don't want to call it an accent, but it's just like the word choice and the rhythm of speech is very different between them, and with the Baron, it's very breathy, and he'll inhale deeply and say a few short words and then exhale and do the same. But no, yeah, he was very cool, and he has that like weird machine that follows him around because he's probably. I think the implication he's still recovering from the poison from the first movie or something like that.
I literally don't even remember the part about him being poisoned. I've always wondered why he had this thing on him.
You don't remember Oscar Isaac being naked?
Yes, I remember that. But
well, no, yeah,
he had that.
Yeah,
yes, of course.
No, Oscar Isaac. The doctor in the first one, the doctor guy gave him that pellet to put in his tooth. So then like Oscar Isaac got paralyzed, and then the Baron like just shows up and starts talking to him when he's just lying there, and then he comes to say hello, and then Oscar Isaac, Leto, breaks the tooth pellet and breathes out the poison, and it kills everyone in the room except the Baron, because the Baron has that levitation device that got him far away enough that it didn't kill him. And that's why he soaks in the goop, and he has that thing that follows him around because it didn't kill him, but it fucked him up pretty bad.
Okay, see, I thought he had that thing the whole time because I just kind of equated it in my mind with his levitation.
Yeah, no, that's different. But that's the thing in his spine that like allows him to kind of float around. But the big orb, I believe, is feeding him some kind of chemical that is helping him heal from the poisoning.
Okay, see, I did not put I just put it all together in like one amalgam, like weird ass. Like
no, it's very weird, and he's he's 1,000 pounds, and he's like, no, I just like, so it didn't work for me as well here as it did in the first movie for some reason, and maybe I'm just overthinking it, but I just thought, and maybe it's because he's been defanged, right? If he's weak and he's not as intimidating as he was before, that might be on purpose, sure. Because he's also, he's not the main villain here anymore now that we have the Emperor involved.
Here's the thing. He wields soft power and the others wield like very like strict hard power.
I'm going to have you expound on that in a minute. Because I want to talk about Austin Butler.
Yes,
because we both for the most part liked the Elvis movie. Like I had some issues with it, but I thought it was pretty good overall. I like to poke fun at Austin Butler because he sounds like Elvis in literally everything now, except for this.
I love it. I love it.
No, yeah, and he uses the same weird breathy speech pattern that the Baron does, but no, like he's terrifying, and he's bald, and he's got some kind of like makeup thing around his eyes, and it's like some kind of prosthetics, and he's jacked beyond like the limits of human beings, and no, it's
but he also
he's the scariest character in the movie.
He's a foil to Paul, and they are more alike than different in many ways, and I thought Austin Butler's approach to it was amazing, and I think
that's a very Shakespearean opinion. Coming off of Elvis,
I think Austin Butler. I think he was coming off of Elvis when they went to film this.
Maybe I don't. That would have probably made sense because this probably filmed in 22 because it was gonna come out last fall and they pushed it. So it probably filmed in late 2022. And Austin Butler. I mentioned Masters of the Air. Austin Butler's in that. And he kind of sounds like Elvis. But
Love it. I don't know why people are like harping on him for this. Like the man was like immersed.
It's true.
In doing this accent and doing it right, and it's not that far off from like the way that many Americans speak. Many Americans speak like the way that Austin Butler does now. And I'm sorry, like I'm ranting about this now, but I just like hate how people harp on him for this because I'm just like, give the man a break. He just is who he is. Anyway, it's probably because me as like a weird person, my accent changes every day with the people I'm exposed to and what I'm watching, and it's just I can't help it.
You don't sound like, as a person who grew up and lives in the South, you don't sound like someone who, what I would think of as a person who's lived in Boston for a few years. But you also, like, didn't you grow up in Statesboro? Like, you're not South Georgia either. 'Cause that's a very different thing.
See?
Yeah.
Even then, my I know came in, and so it's all weird. It comes in at different times. I never know. It really depends on like what I'm watching too.
Yeah.
So if I'm like really immersed in
people
like,
think that
very
my
English
accent's
stuff,
hard to pin, but also like a lot of people that come from the
mine's
north
very hard.
think that people from Georgia, even cities, sound like what I'm thinking about as South Georgia twang, and that's not what Atlanta City people sound like. But
Right.
but no, yeah, like a lot of people don't think I'm from the South.
Same. And then they get really confused because I go Valley Girl, California, I go Boston. It just like really depends. But because I have family from this area. So it's all mixed up. My main point is that Austin Butler can do what he wants and it still makes him a good actor.
That's true. No, he's amazing. He's the scariest person in the movie. No, it's like, oh, he's amazing.
For all, no pun intended, he kills this role. It's so good.
That's not all he kills.
Wonderful. I know. It's so good.
Speaking of
wonderful,
people who talk funny, I was very excited when they announced that Christopher Walken was going to play the Emperor, and I had no idea what to expect. And like, he's just kind of a reserved, like kind of sad old man. Like it's very, and I didn't expect fucking like Emperor
Christopher Walken.
Yeah, like he doesn't talk like Christopher Walken. He doesn't wag his head around, but like it's so obviously not like Emperor Palpatine. Like he's not this crazy old cackling whatever. Like guy in a cloak. He's just kind of a sad old man.
But he's also still Christopher Walken. Like so.
Oh no, but yes, and his
I was like, is this gonna get a little caricature, like because he's just so well known as being himself. I was like, no, it doesn't. It's very also restrained. A lot of these performances are very restrained. Even Austin Butler's, like the character is crazy, but the way he does that, everything is the thing that so up close.
It's more intimidating because of the things he doesn't do. It's like you're waiting for something to happen, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, and you see him not so much as a monster, like he is, but also as a person.
Like, and he's very smart, and he has these he's trying to prove himself, and he wants to be worthy in front of his family, and all these things. Like he has a very clear motivation that he's trying, a thing he's trying to accomplish,
and very human.
Yeah.
So again, just very much like Paul, very much, which is why that final. I mean, and we know this. Everybody kind of knows that they fight, right? They do.
It's in the trailer.
It's not really a spoiler.
May your blade chip and shatter.
Yes, and that's why the final fight between them works so well, because the whole movie, very subtly, they are compared and contrasted from scene to scene. Very interesting.
And then I have never not liked Florence Pugh in anything, but. Again, it's yet another very excuse me. I just burped in the mic. Very understated performance there. And, for the most part, she and the Emperor are, they're just hearing, they're hearing about these things that are happening. They're off in on their fancy castle planet. And it's like, okay, the Fremen are rebelling. What are we going to do about it? It's not the Atreides, right? They're all gone. Yes, the Atreides are all gone. There's no way it's Paul. He was lost in the desert. Blah, blah, blah. It's
like a who's on first situation. And they're like trying to figure it out from afar. They're like, who's this guy? What's that guy? But no, this guy? No, I'll put this guy in. Are we talking about this guy? He's over here? No, he's over there.
And the whole time, everything that happened in the first movie, the Emperor was pulling some of those strings, even though we didn't see him directly. And he's come to realize by the time this starts that his plan didn't work. So he's just like very, very contemplative. Christopher Walken does. He has probably 2 lines in the movie before the big finale. Or there's like one scene where he's speaking with Florence Pugh, and otherwise, like he doesn't talk much. And I wouldn't say that he has a fair amount of screen time. He's just a very like reserved old man.
Yeah. Contemplative. It's a perfect word.
Contemplative. Yes.
I love how
he might be questioning whether he did the right thing. Like, was the Emperor's decision to try to wipe out Atreides? That's kind of led to the end of the universe, or it put things on the path that we have come. And if he just left well enough alone, everything might have been fine.
And it's not just him, but we do learn that as well. And I love that, and the way that Fade and Paul are kind of foils to each other. There's a little bit of that going on between Princess Irulan and the Emperor, because she's looking at him and figuring it all out, that like he's been influenced, but he's also made his own decisions, and she's been a part of it, and she thought that she was really on the ball.
Right.
And like knew what was going on and was in control. She realizes that's not entirely the case. And she realizes that as her father is also realizing that in his own way. And so I think that like her learning from her father's mistakes starts to happen in this movie. And I'm really excited to see how Florence Pugh plays it going forward. Not necessarily like what happens, but like her as an actress, like how is she going to play that? Because to the Emperor's contemplativeness in this movie, she is equally curious. And there's nothing in the script that really tells you that. It's in the way that she's like, making her daily logs or thinking through.
And she's more or less a narrator here, and that's interesting. Have you seen the David Lynch one?
Mm-mm.
She's the narrator in that one too, and like she has this long speech at the opening, and she's the first person you see, like she talks directly into the camera, and it's like weirdly the only bit of exposition you get in that whole movie. It's incomprehensible. Like there's but she takes a much closer role in this movie in part 2 to the one she had in that one, which is interesting, considering she wasn't in part 1 at all, but sort of that movie still covers everything this movie does, but in much less screen time. And it leaves a lot of very important things out. It rushes through a lot of stuff. Okay, so the imagery in this movie, like every single image is stunning. Like, and combined with the first one, we're just looking at desert for like 4 hours. And and it's like somehow it continues to be unique and breathtaking, and the composition's amazing, and like the position of the sun, and somehow just like epic wides and lens flares, but it's all sand dunes. Like I don't understand how you can take like, and not to say like the desert is beautiful. It's an amazing place, but we're looking at the desert for hours and hours, and it somehow continues to be stunning. Like there's never a moment where you get bored of it, and like composition is so intentional, and like there's a reason that everything looks the way it does, right? So it's there's always
I think that physical aspect of the space translates into a theory of how they wanted to do the cinematography, because thinking strictly in terms of like photogenic qualities, the desert is full of bright highlights and dark shadows.
Absolutely.
Simply by the
very
nature
high contrast. Yes.
The sand dunes. Thank you. Yeah. Very, very much high contrasted. And then you have all of these different, very interesting, not quite so perfect, but some are kind of perfect lines going through. or even like repeating patterns in the sand, but also like the arc of the sand dunes, and then you contrast that with the shape of the double suns or the double moons or whatever they have. And so the way that a desert has that immense quality to look different from every angle is used to the advantage in this movie by not upping the contrast, right? They scale it back. Lots of these shots are very, very soft and are balanced out quite well to portray, in times of like high tension, the harshness of the desert. But in the times in between, where it's a place of healing for Paul and his family, but also as a source of strength for the Fremen.
Desert power.
You see that softness. Yes, exactly. The desert power. And so they play with the inherent physical qualities of the set, I guess. to of being on location to their advantage in the way that they shot this movie. And I think there's no better example of like the differences of working with the desert light and the desert shadows with the switch to shooting in infrared for seeing Fade Rotha's first fight scene in this movie.
Oh yeah, the monochrome. Yes, we will. Okay, so I gotta talk about that. Most of the movie is on Arrakis, and then there's a few minutes on the Imperium host planet with Florence Pugh and Christopher Walken, but there's a big sequence in the middle on, I think it's Katy Prime. It's the homeworld of the Harkonnens, and which we saw briefly in the first movie. There were a couple of scenes that took place at night indoors, but a very interesting thing here. And they explain it by this, that apparently it has a black sun, or it's like the atmosphere is polluted so much that like whatever rays the sun's giving off, like it's absorbing the color. And so like everything outdoors on this planet is black and white. It's monochrome. And it's stunning. And it's very, it's obviously very different than the golds and browns that we have in the rest of the movie. But there's also like artificial lights, like the light indoors is in color. So, and there's a scene where the Baron is moving from indoors to out, and it's like he's like moving along, and the saturation is just like pulled out of the picture, and it's just like, oh god, it looks so good. It's so cool, and the like fireworks are like some kind of explosions that
that was so cool.
That they shoot them up into the sky to celebrate. I call them fireworks, but it's not fire. It's like ink. It's like, it looks like liquid that's like going up and kind of evaporating. Like it's
very 2049. I got very significant 2049 like feels in that sequence, because I was like, I see what they're doing, and the color in 2049 too is very purposeful, right?
And it's very sparse.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I think that's going to be like Denis Villeneuve's like one of his things. It's just like the shots have just like kind of a like one color that is like really important. Kind of like remember when we talked about the Batman? It's just like everything is kind of gray and brown, like it's very dark, but like every shot almost has like one specific color that pops because everything else is gray. Like that kind of thing. It's like so much of this movie is that gold of the sand. And then things are contrasted to that. Like a lot of the clothing is very dark, so they stand out in front of the sand and in front of the sun, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And not to say that because there's no color, it's not interesting.
No, absolutely not.
But just for context sake of how we think through these things, cinematography is movement of the camera, but also the color and the contrast and the light and the shadow together, right? So in the sequence, I mean, they shot it in infrared, which is one thing, which is amazing. And I think
wow, okay. Yeah, no, that's a thing.
Yeah. And it's not just black and white, right? So you get this like, but they have to balance it out to make it look like it doesn't pull you out of the verisimilitude or the believability of the scene. It still looks like the shadows and highlights exists. And that's very, very much to the talent of the lighting designers and the DP.
And I think that it ties into the production design to a degree too. Like the Harkonnens, they're all like pale skinned and they have like protrusions and like weird ruts, like, so like some of that is they're greedy or whatever, and their homeworld's like kind of polluted maybe, but like they look like people that have lived underground for a long time. You know what I mean? And maybe this has like the and maybe I'm just overthinking because I want to know the why, the thinking behind things, like as if it were a real thing. You know what I mean? Like give me the science. Maybe they're whatever the solar situation they have leads to them looking not, because they've been there for 10,000 years or whatever. So it's maybe they have mutated and they don't look like regular humans, or they don't look like humans would on other planets because their overpollution and their sunlight is very different. And it means that the Baron and Austin Butler and good old Dave Bautista look kind of freaky.
And it works together so well. And I loved that sequence with being on the Harkonnens world. And we don't go back there, I believe. And so the time that we do spend there is made very purposefully to stand on its own in contrast to Arrakis, but also to give the same amount of visual information.
Absolutely.
Than being in color. Yeah.
One more thing, and then we'll talk about spoilers, because there's some stuff I specifically want to mention about the ending of this movie, but the music, and I've listened to the soundtrack for Part One so many times. Like I work in an auditorium, so it's like, especially the track "Ripples in the Sand." It's like the first from the first movie where he like first encounters the spice, and then the sandworm like swallows the mining rig. Not having seen the movie really on a big screen until very recently, but I have listened to that on my PA system because I've got the big subs, and that's like, and the rhythm is like so intense, and there's like that operatic vocal that comes in, and that's the sandworms are this enormous, terrifying creature that is, it's like, it's just doing what it does really, but it's responsible for however some uncountable number of amount of death, but like it's contrasted with this beautiful operatic vocal, and and it's like that almost like a Jurassic Park kind, like what beautiful majestic music to show something that's very impressive but also very terrifying.
And it's not just that the music is beautiful and operatic. It's restrained.
It's restrained, and it's very textural, and that's kind of that's a thing that Hans Zimmer has kind of later in his career has kind of moved towards, but it's, like it's about, did he did Oppenheimer too, didn't he? Like it's very textural and atmospheric. Mm-mm. Did he not do No?
Mm-mm. No. That was Ludwig Göransson.
That was Ludwig Göransson. You're absolutely right. I get like it has a texture, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what because so much of this is in the desert, and it's like, and it feels so real, right? So I can reach into the sand dune and I can reach into the screen and grab like a fistful of sand, and that has a feeling, and the music feels like rough and like intense, but it's, again, like I like that word you use, atmospheric. It's not about like this big, okay, I compared it to Jurassic Park in a way, but like Jurassic Park is about these big sweeping melodies, and this isn't that. Mm-hmm. But it's also, like it's a contrast often to what you see on the screen. It's, this big like these amazing machines or these giant creatures, but like,
the thing about the music for me is that it's so spiritual. And I don't mean that
Yes.
in any kind of like religious kind of
Sure.
way, but even just and like in meditation and the actual like um physical reactions that our bodies and minds have to different sound waves and different feelings of sound and how that can be so healing, even in the way that plants die under like heavy screamer metal and thrive under classical music. That same kind of effect. I found myself zoned out, like very much in like a meditative state a couple of times in this movie. Um, Not for any other reason than really just that it absorbed me into it. The music was that meditative and that transformative. And when the sound, because the music and the sound are two different things, and they
That
work
is true.
together very well in this movie. But as the music does that to you, then your body, if you're seeing it with a very good sound system, which I did, um, then the body starts responding to that as well, because you can feel part of the music
Yes. I mean,
as
that's what
it's
I'm telling you.
guiding
Like,
you
I can
through the
feel the
scene.
sand dunes, and like
Yes.
the the music and the sound design are like a very like big part of that.
And on the sound side of it, then sometimes you have these effects that call for not just like an effect of sound, but a feeling of sound. And so one of my friends sitting next to me, she has fibromyalgia. And so she was starting to not feel a little not very well during the show, was kind of moving around a little bit. And she was like, but then the sound would drop and you could feel it in your body. And then I was like, oh, great. Thank you. Like, I feel good now.
Excellent. I
And
love
like,
that.
it just kind of like calmed and reset her nerves and, feeling it through your body in those like big intense moments is, almost like a shock to the system in a good way compared to the way that the score is so very um, soulful and it makes you feel the intricacies of it in that way, and they work together so well. I mean, I never really pay that much attention to the music in a movie, to be honest.
And
It
every time you
obviously
say
has a
that to me,
very
it's
big
very upsetting.
effect. I know. And I understand doing what I do, that music has such a big effect and can change a scene. I get it, and it's very important. It's one of those things that also is just kind of like inherent to the movie going experience for a lot of people. And so for me, this was a movie where I was like actually paying attention to the sound because it was such a big part of the movie. And I walked out or I was thinking through it, at least like 3/4 of the way through. And I was like, all right, so what nominations is this film gonna get next year? And I was
It's going
like,
to get quite a
well,
few.
sound editing, sound mixing, score. It's like at the top of my list.
Any last thoughts before we talk about some stuff more specifically?
No, let's get into it.
Let's do it. Okay. Full spoiler warning, people watching. Please go see this movie and then come back if you have not, and then come back and watch the end. We've been we're just about to cross an hour, so we're going to talk about spoilers for a few minutes here. But yeah, go see the
Can
movie.
I say
Don't
the one spoiler that I did not see coming?
sure you yes, go hit me.
So when I left the theater, I said to the people I was with, I was like, I kind of expected everything in this movie to happen as it did. Like, I wasn't like, it was entertaining, but I just wasn't really surprised. And I think that's fine because I study genre, right? I was like, but I did not expect Paul to be Harkonnen. It's like,
The,
that is the one that threw me for a loop.
that is apparently the okay. I didn't know specifically that the Baron was Jessica's mother, but like all the Landsrad, which is like the big houses, the Atreides and the Harkonnens and the Carinos, and there's some other ones that I don't know, but they're like all back in the day, they're all related. It's like that's what like the Baron is Oscar Isaac's cousin. Even one he's a Harkonnen and Oscar Isaac is an Atreides, but they're like some this obscure blood relative in some way. Like all the it's like back in the day, royalty was all related. Like the Queen of Spain is
Yeah.
the second cousin of the Queen of England. Yeah, like that kind of shit. But no, yeah, that was a huge surprise to me. I don't know that it like changes a whole lot, but it was definitely whoa, that's weird kind of moment. Like,
Well, I think it has something to say about how you place inherent value in a person based off of their story, which is a whole thing in this movie. Right?
And maybe that's trying to make
spoilers.
maybe it's trying to make a play against that. Like it's trying to say it doesn't matter. Like doesn't matter where you come from necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the flip side, maybe it does, because if Fade's a foil to Paul, obviously they're different, but more the same in these cases. And that's one more thing that makes them on the same level. And it's like, what's going to win out between the two of them? Because they are essentially the same person. Like, and their bloodlines say that too.
Okay, so I got a question for you.
Yeah.
And it's that I didn't put it in the right show, but well, actually, I kind of did. Is Paul a hero?
I think so. I think that's the whole point of the narrative. It's about fanaticism.
And he is the first movie like sets up like a John Connor kind of narrative. Like everyone is telling him, or he has heard that he's destined for this greatness. And he's not really interested in that until it becomes useful to him or until his father's gone. But this is a full Hamlet situation. Like it's fanaticism. He manipulates people's religious beliefs so that he can coerce them almost into completing his own designs. Like Paul has become Space Hitler by the end of this movie.
Yeah. And the thing is that he's aware of it too, right? And so he says, and I don't think he's disingenuous when he says, I want the Fremen to have their planet, He takes being Fremen very seriously. And so I don't think he's disingenuous in that. But this whole thing is about power corrupting and the corruption of power and what that does and what you'll do to achieve those goals,
very anti-messianic. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And he says at the beginning, I think he's talking with Lady Jessica, and she's like, your father did not believe in revenge. And he's like, well, I do.
I do. And I think that Jessica bit, I think that was in one of the trailers, but like I didn't expect Paul to just immediately reply, well, I do. And that, that kind of leads to a lot of that friction I was talking about between Paul and Shawnee, right? They have this deep romantic connection, but she does not approve of the way that he's manipulating Fremen beliefs, right? First of all, she doesn't believe in the Messiah. She doesn't think that he's the savior or whatever. But, like some people do or are willing to believe that a savior was coming. So why not now? So,
yeah.
And to her, she loves him, but he's still a foreigner. And he's taking advantage of this great power that they have to do a thing that like has ultimately very little to do with the Fremen, other than the fact that the Harkonnens were cruel to them, but they were able to live their lives even under Harkonnen control, right? So no, yeah, it's
and I mean, like they weren't really living their lives, were they? Though I want to be clear about the the politics, the geographical politics of Arrakis, which would be a great article that somebody in geopolitics should write. But they are actively fighting against means of spice production on their planet.
They absolutely are.
Their way of life. So they're not really just living their lives, and they are dealing with colonialization and capitalism and industrialization, all of these things, right? Resource management, even though they're very good at it, they still have trouble. And so the whole point that that's not Shawnee, that's The Witcher. My bad. Shawnee. A little different there. Shawnee says in part of the movie where Paul is rallying all these Fremen in the South in this leaders council meeting, she says, this is how they enslave us. She understands what's at stake later if they end up together. But the people become so religiously fevered that they say, but this is the way he's going to lead us to paradise. And she says that paradise is going to be built on us. So there's a lot going on. And I think people like Johnny, before the events of this part two, are also aware of that. But some people get wrapped up in that. So at the end of the movie, we see her going off on her own. And she is more of a messiah in that way than Paul.
Let's talk about that. I do want to say, like, in the first movie, Paul mentions, like, you know, someone says, what are you gonna do? Like, the emperor is just gonna, you know, he's already gave him the order to wipe us out. Like, what are you gonna do? It's like, and Paul says he's got a daughter, and then somebody like, what? So you're gonna make a play for the Imperium? Like, do you hear what you're saying right now? And that's. He says that in the first movie. And then he comes here and he follows through, and he apparently never told Shawnee about these intentions. But, you know, Shawnee, who, like, apparently in the novel, they've, like, the time span is compressed here. Like, Paul's little sister at the end of the novel was already born, and Paul and Shawnee have had a baby. So, like, that has happened. Apparently, this is according to Wikipedia. I have not read. So I'm thinking that Shawnee's pregnant, and if we get another movie, that's gonna follow through. But no, it's like,
oh my god,
yeah, like he stands in front of the emperor and says, I'm gonna take your power and marry your daughter. And then his daughter, you know, and then Irulan says, all right, if you don't kill my father, I'll marry you. And everyone, that's
the thing she says, willingly.
Yeah. The conversation continues a little bit, and then everyone bows except Shawnee, who just stares at him because he just stabbed her in the heart. And so at the end,
not literally. I feel like in a movie like this, we have to say, like, he did not literally stab her in the heart.
That is true. That's true. So, you know, so then at the end of the movie, we find out that the other houses have. They are not choosing to bow to Paul. So, and he says in a really epic, he's like, lead them to paradise, which is, you know, that's his call for holy war. So the Fremen go onto spaceships to go conquer the Imperium in Paul's name. And Shawnee she's not having it. So she walks out on him. And the last shot of the movie is we see Shawnee about to ride a sandworm into the sunset. And it's like, I was hinting at it before, but, like, it's kind of a downer ending. Like, and apparently it's very similar to the way the novel ended. Like, the reasoning is maybe a little bit different, but, you know, he definitely says, I'm gonna marry Irulan and starts a war, and Shawnee leaves in the novel. But, you know, like, if this was written for the screen, you have this amazing epic sci-fi film with, you know, like, this question that Paul, it's easy to tell he has some, like, cloudy motivations, or not cloudy, but gray motivations. Like, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad to the reasons he's doing what he's doing. But you know, like, he's, again, I'm going back to my first question. He's very clearly not a heroic character, at least not anymore. You know, like, he's made a very greedy play here, and it's kind of a downer ending. And he has these visions. Paul can, through events that, he's had visions throughout both movies, and then, like, late in the second film, he drinks the magic water from the sandworms, and he gets the water of life, yes, and it's actually sand trout. It's an infant sandworm, but, you know, he now has a very clear understanding of his visions. Like, he can legit see the future, and he, like, can understand it, and he knows. Like, if I very
Doctor Strange core,
it kind of is, yeah. Like, but like he knows where it's
This
going.
speech where he's like, "There's one way," and I was like, "Okay, Stephen Street."
But yeah, he knows he's going to start a holy war and that billions of people are going to die because of him, and he can choose to make that not happen, and he goes through with it anyway. It's like he understands the choice lies with him, but that if he follows through, that billions will die, and ultimately he follows through, and his Chani, who has pledged to love him as long as he stays the person that he was when they met, basically, she walks out on him. Totally understandably, in my opinion, because he's gone a little off the deep end.
But what is the motivation for him to, make that decision? He doesn't start this holy war per se. There are a lot of other players who set this up. He ultimately becomes the one that says, all right, like, I guess we're going to go for it. And he kind of gets pushed there. But for me, what goes back to making that decision is the revenge. He's just consumed by revenge. And I think that
and I will, before you continue,
let that go at one point.
Right. I think he has, by this point, I don't know, what does revenge look like? But he could have decided not to go to war. But, he has eliminated all of the people that are responsible for his family's death at this point, right? And so he doesn't need to be the emperor. He doesn't need to start a war.
And yet,
but yeah, so and maybe it's just because other people, the Harkonnens, the Carrinos, the Imperium, thought they could push around the Atreides, and now all the other families also think that they can defy him. So maybe it's a play out of greed or defiance. Charlotte Rampling, the oldest of the witch women, was like, the Atreides are going to a place of defiance, and we can't have that. That doesn't, because we've been the Bene Gesserit are hard to explain, and I'm not even sure I totally understand, but they're this organization of mostly women that have been pulling strings to point the universe in a certain direction over thousands of years or whatever. And they even predict that there's a Messiah or a messianic figure coming. And it could be Paul, or it could be Feyd-Rautha, or it could be their offspring, or it could be somebody else entirely. But, they're pointing all the strings in this web so that they all point the same direction and lead to an outcome that they have predetermined. And the Atreides are a wrench in their plans, or they predict that they could become one. Is this making sense? Am I rambling?
Yeah, of course. No.
Yeah. So at the advice of the Bene Gesserit, the Emperor said that we basically have to wipe out the Atreides, and he gave that responsibility to the Harkonnens. Now the Emperor is largely powerless, and the Harkonnens are gone, and Paul could walk back into the desert, and the Fremen could be at peace, I guess. But the whole thing is the spice, and you can't. If you control the spice, if you control the spice, you have all the power.
Right.
Doesn't he? He threatens to blow up all the spice, doesn't he?
He does, because he knows that that's the one thing that could make the other houses stop their advance. And they say, "We call your bluff, and we're not going to back down." And he's like,
yeah, I mean, I'm the Baron of Arrakis. I have all the spice now, so it's and for reasons that are also convoluted and hard to explain, interstellar travel is impossible without spice. It's a mind expanding drug. It's like LSD, but it's to the point that because thinking computers don't exist in this world because they're mistrusting of AI. You have to, the only way you can calculate long distance space travel is by using spice. And yeah. So that for a lot of reasons, it's the most valuable substance in the universe, and it only comes from this place. So like, but he's conquered Arrakis. Like, that's not enough for him. He wants the Empire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so it's like
And so I wonder, because neither of us really know the books. We haven't
true.
read them.
Yeah, and
Is there a reason, that he's seeing, right? They put a lot of emphasis on him seeing lots of different ways. Is he seeing a reason that hasn't been revealed yet why he would be choosing to go to war over not going to war? Like, what's the alternative? Is this actually the better choice?
and that is a very interesting question. We don't know that we don't know
And I
that we've
think
necessarily seen all of his visions.
that conundrum there is kind of like that withheld information that Paul was withholding from Johnny, and how Lady Jessica was also kind of hiding things from him or trying to push him in a certain way, but also in the way that there's a truth. There's never a complete truth happening between any of the players in this. It's very much like
that is absolutely true. Everything operates in a gray area.
Yeah. And so that I could see that being a gray area that he just doesn't reveal, like even to the audience at this point. Maybe it comes up later. But nevertheless, even if that's not the case, the question of why is significant, because it's just as interesting if there is no why. And he's just like, I don't know, like, this is what people want to do, and I'm not part of it,
or people are willing to do this for me, and power corrupts. He has, he's convinced this race of indigenous people to fight for him and to die for him if necessary. And, that's an incredible tool. And they're among the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Why not use it? He's just power has corrupted him to the point that he's become as greedy as the Harkonnens.
Oh, absolutely. And it's because the conflict moves not from defense or revenge of the Atreides family, or even, for the Fremen of fighting off the Harkonnen. It becomes personal, which is why we get Fade Paul at the very end.
And, and we mentioned Paul's father, Leto didn't believe in revenge. He also Paul lacks the kind of respect for the Fremen that his father had. To Paul, they are a tool, but, and the desert power thing that came from Leto, but that was I'm here to do my job. I'm not here to bother you. That was Leto's whole thing. Leto was not a conqueror, at least as far as we knew him. A bad day can change anybody's mind, but
even with Paul's whole thing about becoming Fremen, he goes through some different trials, quote unquote. It's very much like the hero's journey of going through the feats of Hercules, so to speak, of becoming Fremen. It's very ritualized, and they say, okay, if you do this, then you're going to be Fremen.
You be Fremen or you die.
Exactly. And then they name him. It's all very ritualistic. And he takes that very seriously. He's like, I want to be Fremen. And then later in the film, you start to see, while that may be true, there's an and but to the situation as well. And they're going to fight for me. But if I'm Fremen, then that's going to be a source of power for me too. So it's, and that's why Chani is always kind of like, you're Fremen to me, but you are a foreigner. You always will be one, even though I love you, right? And she sees that. And so I love how they've kind of pitted these little things between all of the characters and all the players in these very minute ways about identity and truth, and how those are the sources of power and ideology that push the entire physical conflict.
It's true. And Paul, he's a very charismatic leader. How many people close to him expected him to make these choices?
And it depends on who you're asking. Johnny would say one thing, Lady Jessica would say another, and those are the two women in his life that, that don't bow to him at the very end. It's the two of them. And it's because they know those different parts. And Lady Jessica's raised him as a loving mother, but when she becomes the head, whatever, I don't remember what her new title is.
It's like she is a Bene Gesserit or a descendant of one, so she has the power. But it's their elderly religious figures, and their oldest one is dying or whatever. So they have kind of because she has the power, they've made her that basically.
And when she gets that, she takes on a different kind of role.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's very obvious. But she still knows Paul. She knows how she raised him. She knows what the stakes are. So she gets to use that to her advantage as well. And then Johnny sees another side of it. So I think it just depends on who you ask. Everybody's going to have a different opinion or see a different trajectory of how Paul.
What about Gurney? Josh Brolin's character, he was Brolin? He was one of Leto's bodyguards, basically. And they find him in the desert. He's been acting like a smuggler to try to fuck with the Harkonnens. And, the whole time he's like pushing Paul, like almost pushing him into violence, but like encouraging him to use the tools that are available. But how does Gurney feel at the end of this movie? Like, does Gurney feel good about him trying to conquer the Empire?
Yeah, he does. But I don't think he necessarily likes the process, right? Okay. Just because he is an opportunist, right? We see that with the smuggling. True. We see he is an opportunist through and through. And that is especially evident when he is like coaching Johnny. He's like, get down. This is not the time to do it. You're not going to achieve your goal right now. He's knows how to read a room, how to read a situation, and use that to his advantage. And that's going to change play by play. He kind of teaches it to Johnny because he knows that she's going to be an important player because she's important to Paul. Mm-hmm. Right? And he's like, oh, but she can do her own thing as well. He sees that, right? And so he's like, I don't think he's surprised because he's one of these people that has raised Paul in a way and knows where his ideology is coming from, knows what his motivations are. But he also sees that there's an extension of that in Johnny, and there's this whole other extension to the Fremen that he doesn't understand. So I think that maybe he doesn't agree with some of the decisions or ways that some of these things happened. But I think when it comes to Paul and his militarism, he's like, this is exactly what he was trained for. He's not surprised. Mm-hmm. What surprises him is Johnny, and he sees an opportunity to try and mold her into a weapon. And it comes off as seeming kind of, I don't know, generous in a way. He's like, hey, here's some advice. It's very spycraft kind of like. He's got claws. He's more than just a fighter. He is a strategist, an opportunist and a strategist. And so I think that the extent to the religious fervor, he's surprised by. But I don't think he's surprised by the way that Paul was able to manipulate that.
Any final thoughts?
That's my hot take. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah. I mean, no, this movie's incredible, and it's visually it's nothing like anything I've ever seen before. And it's
stunning.
But it's thematically complex. Like it's Hamlet in space, or it's like Game of Thrones. But this is the thing that inspired Game of Thrones. If so it's very, very thickly plotted, which is absolutely true. But if you watch it
so tragic, it's so tragic and so Shakespearean in that way because there's all these other games going on and these asides, and you never really know who's talking to who or doing what.
Yeah, and Paul's awesome, and everybody loves Paul, and then Paul. This is what Paul does.
He thought Hamlet was cool too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and that's just like, it's very brave to have a big sci-fi epic with like such a kind of a downer ending. I think. And what I mentioned, it was understated, and maybe it's just ultimately we have this big battle, but then like these universe changing events just kind of play out in a conversation, and maybe that's just how it's just fair. The contrast there is very apparent to me, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but like the fate of the universe is it's not decided in this big epic battle with spaceships and sandworms. It's decided between Paul and Austin Butler with a knife.
And isn't that usually kind of like how world conflicts get, resolved, quote unquote, though? It's not always the manpower. The manpower comes from a lack of successful diplomacy. And so I think it's a realist take. There's a lot of shit that happens that works up to the way that the final act of the movie is structured. And then you get the denouement, right? The aftermath, the setup for the next one, the tying up of loose ends. If we didn't see Chani riding away on a sandworm, we might be like, hey, well, like, where did she go? Like, is she okay? Like,
I don't know.
What's
And
happening?
I'm very curious where, what they might do with the next movie. Like, apparently the next novel, Dune Messiah, is very, very short. It's like a novella almost, and it's far in the future. It's like, I don't know, 10, 15 years or something have passed, and it's kind of as the Holy War's wrapping up. So there isn't a lot of text about the war itself, apparently. There might be some like written by Brian Herbert, and then the following novel is Children of Dune, which is like Paul's children. Yeah, and so it's very with Dune, it was kind of, especially after having seen the first one, like it was pretty easy to predict where things were going to fall, and like you said, like it's ultimately kind of predictable in a lot of ways, but no, it's very interesting. It definitely sets up another movie. I hope we get another movie. It seems like Denis wants to go do something else in between, instead of spending another 3 years of his life in the desert.
Well, you know what? Maybe that's a way to kind of age them up.
Maybe it is. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, closing thoughts.
A Disney movie takes time.
That's true. I can't believe they made this in. I can't believe they made this in like 2.5 years. It's
honestly, I can't either. But they were very economical with the way that they shot it. Right. It's very much using what's available and scaling it back, and then letting the big things shine and letting the compositions shine. And the compositions are quite simple, actually. And I know a lot of
that's
hard work
why
goes
they're
into production design and the sets and everything, but they're also, very actually like harsh, like German kind of structures, right? They're very reminiscent of those like concrete World War II era kind of like harsh. I forget what the word is. I don't want to say structuralist. That's not right. But we have some of this architecture on our campus at UMass Amherst as well. And it looks like these kinds of things that are like, especially on the Harkonnen world and things like that. But these very symmetrical.
There's a lot of negative space. Like,
yeah.
There's a bit where Paul and Chani are like sitting together on the top, on like the ridge of a sand dune, and so they're darker color, but surrounded by them is just the gold of the sand and the sunset. So it's like, again, kind of one color sort of predominantly takes over the space, but then you have the two of them in this, like, slightly off, so they're hanging out in the middle there, and so it's mostly negative space. It's just very, very stark. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because of that fact, it's very, very visually striking. And I also like, I just want to point out the cute little bit where he's talking about his home world and how there's like, you have this ocean of sand. Well, it on my planet, it would be water, and you could dive in, and you're like, it's so deep you can't even reach the bottom. And she just doesn't believe it. Like she can't imagine that because she spent her entire life in the desert. And it was just very, very sweet moment to me.
Yeah, and the way that they shot it, I think is a perfect example of like having these amazing locations and using those and to your advantage and not having to do too much because they just reverse the shot and then look out,
Mhm.
right? And then you get the information. And so like while I am astounded that this movie took what, 2.5 years to get out
And they were going to
and
release it
made and
in
out.
November. Like I don't know why it got delayed necessarily. Maybe they weren't going to finish it on time. Maybe they thought it was safer to do it early summer as opposed to like a fall movie. But like they're in theory they were going to do it
Oh,
in 2 years.
yeah. And like that's a testament to the professionalism and the practitioners who were doing their craft on this movie. And I think it speaks to Denis' vision because it is, I don't want to say simple, but restrained. It's very restrained and it lets the visual tell the story without having to inject too much into it. It's not a superhero movie spectacle. And I know a lot of people are like very kind of like over all of those special effects kind of things. And there are special effects in this movie, like of course.
They're
But
handled very well. Like they're
yeah.
everything. It's in a cloud of sand, or it's a little out of focus, or it's off in the distance, right? So it makes it feel a lot more real than it could have.
And a lot of those things are relying on basic principles of light and shadow
Yes,
to make
it's so
them
true.
formidable. Yeah. So to that point, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like they didn't really have to do, obviously they did things
Well,
to
I well it
process.
they do and they don't. Like like I was saying, like there are so many striking images in this movie, and we've spent so much time in the desert, but they still consistently surprise me. And in order to do that,
Mhm.
like you have to plan it so thoroughly. Like if you don't want any two shots that look the same, you know what I mean? Like so
Mhm.
it's amazing and it's so deliberate, but it's so simple. And that's where the elegance and the
Elegant. Yeah.
the that's where the elegance and the spectacle come from is like it doesn't have to be that flashy, like. And there are
Yeah.
there are a couple of big flashy shots for sure, like where the three sandworms come out of the sandstorm. It's just like, and everybody flee, and
Yeah.
it's epic, but most of the movie is not that.
No, 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 no. And neither is it mostly explosions. Just not, you know, there's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of really great fight choreography that's like top notch.
Oh,
But
the
when it
first scene with
comes
like the
to
anti-grav stuff and the people falling off the rocks, and oh god, it's so cool.
it felt like it felt like a throwback to um what is it? Uh what's episode 4? Star Wars episode 4. Is it A New Hope?
New Hope, that
Is
was the
that what
first
it is?
one. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it feels like a callback to that on Tatooine for me for some reason of like Ben Kenobi and Luke Skywalker being in the desert
Right.
together and having like all of their I forget what they're called, but
Droids.
everything else going on in the desert. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
maybe it
yeah.
was the droids. I don't know.
I don't know. Jawas.
Anyway, yeah, the Jawas. Yeah. There was something about that to me, and it felt like a little bit of a callback to that in some ways, but I'd have to go back and watch it again. That said, they're obviously aware of a legacy of sci-fi films that Denis Villeneuve is very well versed in, and yet it feels fresh and elegant. I like this word to describe it. And a word we used earlier for the Emperor. This film is contemplative in
It
itself.
absolutely is.
It lets you think through it. So, um, would see again. I really thought
We'll
that
see
it was
again.
fantastic.
see if
Will,
I can see if I can find the
will
time to
and
see it again in
would.
the theater. I don't know, but I've already
Yeah, I mean, I've got
ordered the
a date
steelbook.
with Indiana Jones Monday night,
That's
so
fair.
we'll have to
I don't
see.
blame you.
And
Um,
to that end, just a quick note. Do you know when the next Captain America movie is coming out? I feel like that's been talked about for a
February.
long
It was
time.
supposed to be in May, and they pushed it to next year. It's not till
Oh
February.
shit.
Yeah.
Well, that
The only
that
the only Marvel movie
scares
this
me.
year is Deadpool and Wolverine. Oh no, it's a
Okay.
you know like reshoots are just a thing that happens, right? Like it's hard to say
Yeah.
if oh god, there's going to be reshoots. The movie must be terrible. I don't think that's true, but for that one, the reports are that like they have to reshoot like 3 major action sequences, and that seems like a big problem for me. Like a big problem to me. Like that's different than we need to go clean something up, or we're missing a shot
coverage
here, or
Yeah.
like, or like that. Oops, it's out of focus. We have to do this one again. Like like that's what reshoots are for. But
Yeah.
or like, okay, we've determined that we have to clip something out of the movie, so this other bit has to be adjusted slightly. Like that's what reshoots are for. Like generally minor adjustments that improve the whole package. But if you're redoing like huge chunks of a film, it might be good, it might be bad, it might be somewhere in the middle.
I asked because, Harrison Ford is going to be in the new one. So there's that. But
That's
also,
true.
this looped back around nicely to Dune because I feel like Dune was able to come out so quickly because I don't know how many reshoots they did for it, but I would imagine it's pretty minimal because
I'd
it
agree
was
with that.
so well planned out.
Yeah.
And they obviously planned these shots so meticulously. And to that point, it's also a different genre than like the next Captain America movie. And there's less intertextuality to it to consider. And you don't have to compete with the opinions of an entire studio to make a movie like Dune.
Right.
It stands on its own pretty well. And I feel like, I forget which studio produced it or distributed it.
Well, it's Warner Brothers. Is it Legendary? I think it's Legendary is who makes it, but it's Warner Brothers is the distributor.
They have individual creatives within their studios, whereas like Marvel is predominantly one creative.
They also have David Zaslav, who that's another podcast long conversation. But I thank you very much, Katie.
Of course.
I love this movie. I love the first one. I would be surprised if this is not my favorite movie this year. But we will see. It is only March.
Pretty good.
And that's a thing to say, but it's pretty good.
I'm looking forward to the new Guy Ritchie movie at the end of the year with Henry Cavill. It's going to be great.
The Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Yes. It looks so good. Oh, I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay.
A very different movie, but still
a little different than
one
this.
of those. One of those kind of, I feel like Dune Part Two is going to have the same kind of Oppenheimer effect where out of the context of Barbenheimer, I'm not talking Barbenheimer, I'm just talking Oppenheimer, where everybody was like, this is a original, creative, well-made film with amazing visuals and sound that and an amazing cast that came out earlier in the year and then has to make its whole way through the award season again, right? So I feel like 9 months from now, we'll be coming back on the Dune Part 2 train again because they'll be ramping up for their
awards campaign.
Yeah, and I would not be surprised if they re-release this.
They absolutely will, like either at Christmas time or like early next year.
Yeah.
If it's in serious awards contention, which I absolutely think it will be.
Yeah, I don't know if there'll be any like best acting nomination. I mean, while these performances were great,
yeah.
I don't know if they are on that level.
Paul, it's a very big range that he shows, which is like a big deal. Like at the beginning, like he's still kind of a kid, and then by the end of this movie, he's definitely grown up and he's kind of turned evil. Like there's a big shift here, and that is a difficult thing to show. But it's also
I don't feel like it's leading man.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. But there's
like Timothée Chalamet is a leading man. Let's not get this wrong, but there's just something about it that doesn't land in this for me that would put him in that category.
Sure.
Now, Austin Butler, and I'll say I'm not I feel like I need to clarify. I'm not like a huge Austin Butler stan. I am not emotionally invested in this or whatever. I'm not a fangirl of Austin Butler, but I appreciate his work. and the discourse that he's living with as an actor. He was nominated for Elvis for the Academy Award and leading actor. And I could see him getting a potential, again, I don't know, but a potential supporting actor nomination for this movie. And
it's just like, it's so early to tell, but yeah, like, it's gonna be nominated in all the technical categories.
Yeah.
And like the
cinematography, music or score, sound, mixing, sound design, however they divide or combine.
Production design, hair and makeup.
For sure. Yep.
Good bet Denis gets a Best Director nomination. And
original, adapted screenplay.
Adapted screenplay and Best Picture are they're like, I can't imagine that it doesn't get it. Like, especially like, because Best Picture is flexible in its number, like it could get up to 10, but it's going to be nominated for Best Picture for sure. The other ones are harder to call sometimes because there are fewer of them, but like, I would be surprised if there wasn't a Best Director or Best Adapted Screenplay nomination.
Yeah. Do you want to take like maybe 5 minutes and we could go through, since the Oscars are next weekend, we could talk about Oscars things for this year? Do you have any predictions?
I'm going to mark the time code. Predictions and what I want aren't necessarily the same. Oppenheimer's going to get a lot of stuff. It'll probably get Best Picture and Best Director. Like, the only one that I know for sure is it's going to be Robert Downey Jr. It's not going to get supporting actress for Emily Blunt. That's going to go somewhere else.
Which is sad because that's what I want, but I don't think it's going to happen.
But what was I going to say? Hold on. Oh, like, I kind of think like, I would like to see Paul Giamatti win for The Holdovers over Cillian Murphy, but that's just me.
And you know what? I think it might happen. I haven't actually seen The Holdovers. I get very picky about what I see.
Who else is nominated for supporting actor?
Oh, supporting actress. Sandra Hool, is that her name?
I feel like I haven't seen a lot of the Oscar movies.
The German lady.
That's part of the problem.
I've seen a good number of them, but not all of them. I just don't have a primary inclination.
Okay, America Ferrera for Barbie, Danielle Brooks for The Color Purple. They're both very good. Divine Joe Randolph in The Holdovers, also very good. Get it. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Divine Joe Randolph. But
the one that people are confused about is Best Actress, and I would like it to go to Emma Stone, I think, but
it's going to be Lily Gladstone.
Emma Stone got the Golden Globes, and then I feel like after that, it's just like, oh, okay, and so it'll go to Lily. But I honestly don't want it to go to Lily. Like, I'll be very happy for her, and I understand the significance of it. I just didn't vibe with the movie or her performance in it.
The movie's a rough watch. Like, it's not there. It has a lot of issues in my opinion, but I think there's a very good movie in there. It's just, it's bloated and I mean, we talked about it. We have a whole episode on the channel about Killers of the Flower Moon and how like we all
my dislike of it is well documented.
It is. But I think like Lily Gladstone, what have I seen? I've seen Maestro. I've seen Poor Things. Lily Gladstone's my pick out of those, but I haven't seen Anatomy of a Fall or Naiad. I know you're going to tell me no, but did you ever watch Maestro?
Did not. No. Okay. Didn't feel like it.
Yeah, I think like it'll probably bore you, but this is just like one peak moment of Maestro that is amazing and frustrating all at once. And I think we probably talked about it via text, but it's just like
it's conducting.
Well, it's the there's a scene where he's conducting the resurrection, and it's all one take, and it's 6 minutes long, except he randomly cuts in the middle.
And then they cut it.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, that was that and my thought in watching it was like, okay, well, that was a great shot, whatever. And then they go back to the one. Why did you cut it? And it's like it just, to me, it reeked of this is too, like you have a live orchestra there. Like, this is too expensive. We haven't gotten it in one, so we have to cut it. And then in interviews, he's just saying that he cut away on purpose. And I'm just like, why? No.
But for what purpose?
Yeah.
Sure, it can be purposeful, but like, why? Like,
he just cuts to like, most of the time it's kind of sort of behind the orchestra, like, and he cuts into some faces of orchestra players a couple of, or like to a violinist, and then he cuts to a singer, and then he goes back to the crane shot. And the crane shot is amazing. Like, he's like, he's performance, and he's sweaty, and he's going crazy, and he's live conducting the orchestra, and it's this enormous crane that starts way back and pans all around, and then it comes back around to her, and it's at a moment in the film where they're like separated, and then they have this big like emotional like a silent reconciliation over the top of the orchestra, and then before he takes his bow, he comes around and kisses his wife. Some of that is that's after the wonder's over, but that's like, no, like it's a wonderful scene at all levels, except that they cut away from this amazing shot for no reason, and it makes me very sad because it's so good, Katie.
I need Bradley Cooper to not star in a movie he's directing.
That's probably fair.
Because he gets so wrapped up in the performance of it and the technicality of like, it's almost kind of method. It's not method, but it's method adjacent, where he's like, I'm going to learn how to conduct this, so I do it perfectly. And I'm like, you don't have to.
Well, okay.
I'm like, you could fake it and make a oneer and nobody would know. Except people who are like really into it. Except
I would know. But well, it drives me batty when like the person playing violin. I played violin for 12 years. Like, it drives me nuts when the people playing in a movie are obviously not playing the music that you're hearing. That's not a problem in this movie.
Sure. But like hire the people to do it right. But if the lead actor, and it's just my opinion, and it's a lazy one, but you know what? This is how movies get made. He doesn't have to know, or find a different creative way to do that. Learn part of it so you get it down really good for the parts that you know where the camera's going to be on you, and sweep around to all of the different instruments, like push in on certain strings, even. That would be amazing, right?
I agree. It would
a performance.
The crane's on the wrong side for that, but not that's just me talking about how the sausage is made.
I know.
Yeah. I don't.
But,
I just like
make it a steady cam.
Like, if you want to show, you can't steady cam through an orchestra. If you want to show the orchestra, then it should have been designed.
If you use the magic of movies, like, that's what I'm saying.
If you wanted to show the orchestra, then the shot should have been designed a different way. Like, and
exactly.
it's incredible the way it is. But okay, maybe it's not the best way to. He's getting in his own way, is my point.
That's also what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And in his way, it's because I think he's the actor in it. He wants to give him his space to do the actor.
Or he should direct a movie and not perform in it.
Exactly.
Do one or the other.
When he's directing it, it happened on A Star Is Born too. He gets so wrapped up in being the actor part of it and making a good movie that it doesn't help him achieve his goal. So I'm like, pay attention to one or the other, dude.
I think Poor Things is going to get production design. I mean, is going to get costume design and probably production design.
Yeah.
Sorry. Trying to wrap it back around, because we spent 4 minutes talking about Maestro for no reason, and it's not going to win any awards. I did really like Poor Things. I was surprised at how horny it was, which isn't a problem. Just it surprised me.
It's so entertaining.
That's wonderful.
I wasn't
It's so
expecting it
good.
either, but it was very entertaining.
Um,
I like the end of that one the best.
yeah.
It was good.
What else is here? Oppenheimer's got editing. That's in the bag.
Yeah,
At least in
yeah,
my
yeah.
opinion. Makeup and hair. I guess makeup and hairstyling would also be poor things. None of these other ones. I haven't seen Golda. But none of
Makeup
these
and
other ones
hairstyling.
are remarkable.
Is Barbie nominated for makeup and hairstyling?
Doesn't look like it.
I
No, it's
don't
not
know.
here. Not what? Oh, I'm looking at the Oscars website. No, it is not. I was like, not according to this list.
B list.
Yeah, the
Which
actual
is
list.
sad because I would have said Barbie for makeup and hairstyling, honestly. And it's Jacqueline Duran doing the costumes for Barbie. Like, come on. Did she get nominated for costume?
Barbie costume design. Yes, she is nominated for
Okay,
costume design.
so
I don't think she's going to win, but she's nominated.
Jacqueline Duran is an amazing costume designer. She's
That is true.
won many Oscars. So it's still in the bag, or not maybe in the bag, but in the running for me.
I mean,
And
that's like
Jacqueline Duran
that.
could win an Oscar for her costume design of Little Women, which is like not her best costuming work. Like, I'll be honest. Then, like, I feel like she should have Barbie. Like,
Not that I think it will win, but that's about the only category that I think Napoleon is deserving of a nomination, and it's in here. I don't think it's going to win, but no, like that's the. It was
that's
very
the one.
disappointing. Yeah, that's the thing that they did well.
Okay.
Okay, that was an oversimplification, but Napoleon's not good.
We've also talked about that before.
We have what best picture list that I haven't seen. American Fiction is fantastic. Haven't seen Anatomy of a Fall. I loved The Holdovers. I love Barbie. Haven't seen Past Lives. That's Greta Lee, right? Past Lives. And then The Zone of Interest.
Zone of Interest was very interesting.
Isn't it like a Nazi movie? Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's worth it, actually. It was I was saying to the people I ended up seeing it with, I went by myself and saw two of my friends there, and I was like, oh, hello. But I said to them afterwards, I was like, I don't think this is a movie that you could say you really enjoyed, but I appreciated it.
What about? Have you seen The Creator?
I have. I really liked it, actually.
You just cut out. Maybe you're being overprocessed or something. I gotta look at that noise gate. What about Godzilla -1? Do you see that
I've
one?
not seen it. Do not care. Sorry.
I've
not seen it. Do not care.
I like a lot of bad monster movies, and so I won't try to convince you to see most of those. But Godzilla -1 is something very special.
I've heard that it is, and I am very happy for the people who are very excited about it. I just don't have any inclination to see it because I don't enjoy a monster movie. Like it's not really. It doesn't interest me.
What it is a movie about survivor's guilt and trauma. But there's also
not something I'm interested in.
There's also Godzilla.
And like for context, I don't know if this is in the same realm, but there was a trailer for the new Godzilla and King Kong movie where they like team up.
Yeah.
It looked awful. Awful. My friends and I just laughed at it.
I'm gonna go
because we were.
It's gonna be awful, but we were
unimpressed.
This is what A List is for, so I can see bad movies and review them on the YouTube show.
Yes, that's what I did with Madam Web, even though I don't really want to talk about it.
I'm going to see that tonight. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, text me.
Going with see that with some friends. Looking at scrolling back through the list here. Anyway, Godzilla minus one was up for visual effects, and that it might be deserving of that. Weirdly, it's not in for international feature, but it wasn't submitted because each country gets to submit one, and Japan submitted Perfect
Mhm.
Days, which is actually nominated here, so that's good. But
That was also good. I saw that.
did you? I didn't get to see that.
I saw
Um,
it. It was good.
is it? This is weird because the Zone of Interest is nominated for international feature, but it's also in for Best Picture. So that just tells me that Zone of Interest is going to win
Mhm.
this category. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
and that's just a little.
The Academy is very predictable if you don't go
Yes,
based off of
they
like
absolutely are.
merit.
Right.
If you understand voting patterns and the way that it works and the what's getting talked about in the news, then and you understand the voting body, then you can kind of do it. And that's how I know that Lily Gladstone's going to get the Oscar because she got the SAG, but not the Golden Globe. And the Academy loves Martin Scorsese, and all they see is, unfortunately, I think all the Academy sees is Scorsese pushing her for this movie. And she gives a great performance. It's just not my favorite because
Sure.
I don't vibe with the movie. But, I wish it was more about her and not Scorsese, especially for her.
And that's fair. I listened to, he was on Mark Maron last week. And she's a delightful person, and she gave a really, really thoughtful interview. It was great.
I'm sure she seems amazing, and I love
No,
that
yeah,
for her. And I
she's
can't wait to
a
see more from her.
delightful person in any video I've seen of her. So it's
I just want her out of the Scorsese hive. I'm just like done with it.
what about
I'm
do you like
freaking
do you
done.
an animated feature? Do you have any thoughts? Is there any chance it's not
No.
Spider-Man? Have you seen any of them?
I I saw Spider-Man. I think that's the only one I saw.
Um, I have seen The Boy and the Heron, Elemental, and Spider-Man. Um, Boy and the Heron's the only one that can give Spider-Man a run from its money, but Spider-Man's so popular that I think that's just what it is.
Yeah, I've only
But
seen Spider-Man, and it was great.
but The Boy and the Heron's amazing, by the way.
I've heard. I just
Not
I
a
don't
Miyazaki
know.
girl.
No, I'm really not actually.
That's
I
fair.
There's something about it that
And
is
like
very kind of like uncanny to me.
anime doesn't like work for me. Like I can't like I've never been able to sit down and get through an anime series, but I love
Mhm.
anime films.
Mm, yeah. No, I'm
Okay.
very happy that it's getting its flowers. But one thing I've learned, kind of circling back to what we were saying in our kind of like intros, was that even being in grad school and managing my time with what I see, I am still really kind of selective about what I do see because there's
Sure.
so much to see. If I saw everything, I would never get anything else done.
Well, I at the top of the show I listed a bunch of movies that I have seen in the last month and a half or whatever, and that's just because it's the slow season at work. Like starting right now, starting March 1st, um, I'm yeah, it's going to be very difficult for me to get to the movie theater in the next like probably 6 weeks or so. Um,
Yeah.
and that's just that's just life. And I do events, and people don't want to do events when it's really cold. So when the spring starts, it gets really busy,
Yeah.
and then it slows down like late summer. Um,
Yeah.
or I just don't
Yeah.
sleep. I go to like the 10 p.m. whatever, uh, and
Yeah.
then
And
yeah,
that's not good either.
that's
That's not good.
it's a lot harder these days than it was like in my like mid 20s.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
have you hit 30 yet? Are you it's like that's when stuff starts falling apart. I just wondering because you were talking before we started, you were talking about going to ballet class, and you were like ankles are hurting.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it only gets worse.
Great. Thank you so much. I
Sure.
feel really
Happy
good
to
about
help.
that.
Okay, so we've rambled a bit. So on that note,
Yeah.
I'm going to scroll back down the run of show so I can read it correctly. As always, thanks for watching. Engine25 Reviews. If you want to hear more, don't forget to like and subscribe. My name is Brandon. I'm Engine25 on all the things, sometimes with an underscore. You can find us on YouTube and podcast services by searching Engine25 Reviews, no space in Engine25. We'll be back soon with a new review. And until then, go watch a movie.